Welcome to Dugouts 101. My name is Eric Melvin. I'm the VP of Operations at Clean Water Pro, and I have Lynn, the CEO of Clean Water Pro, CWP, and Vantage Drones on the call as well today. So we'll be kind of tag teaming this as well, just throughout to answer any questions that you might have. But just to get started, kind of want to have a lot of interaction today. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them out into the chat there. So our first question to you guys is, let's hear from you. Are you building a dugout? Do you have an existing dugout that you're interested in cleaning up? Do you not have a dugout at all and you have a small water garden, that kind of thing? So we will be focusing on dugouts today, but a lot of what we're going to be talking about will transcribe over into other water bodies as well, other water features that you might have, or even if you live like with just like a natural water garden or a bubbling rock kind of thing. A lot of what we're talking about might be of use to you. So today we're going to be talking about kind of everything to do with dugouts. We're going to be looking at the common issues that are plagued with dugouts. So that's like algae, murky water, tannins, that kind of thing. Then we're going to be talking about the different solutions that you can do to mitigate those issues kind of thing, and the do's, the don'ts, how to size and build a dugout that's being properly built for success. So it's less maintenance for you, less headaches, that sort of thing. So without further ado, we'll get started. So a little bit about us. So Clean Water Pro started back in 2016, but us as a company have been around for a lot longer than that, since 2008. We have a number of different companies underneath our corporation, which includes Clean Water Pro, pondsupply.ca, Vantage Drones, and CWP Environmental. So they each do something a little bit different. We do a lot of work with drones, so drainage mapping, inspections, geomagnetics, that sort of thing. CWP Environmental is more of on a commercial level, where we're doing environmental assessments, monitoring fish salvage, that sort of thing. And then Clean Water Pro, that's our large focus, where we deal a lot with commercially with lake fisheries for overwintering fish. We do a lot of work with retention ponds and kind of farm back like homeowners, as well as we do a lot of work with water and waste. So municipal wastewater lagoons, hog barns, that sort of thing. And then pondsupply.ca is our other company, and that's for the smaller backyard pond side of things as well. So water gardens, koi ponds, just general aesthetic kind of water features, bubbling rocks, that sort of thing. So dugouts. What are the pros and cons of dugouts? So dugouts serve as an efficient water drainage reservoir. So in a time of drought, which we have some people here joining us from Alberta, we know that there's really low water levels out in Alberta right now. So having a dugout or these reservoirs on your property work is a really good way to utilize excess water for watering cattle, your crops, even your own backyard. You're kind of maintaining your yards and stuff. But they can also serve as a larger scale recreational activity, such as trout fishing. You can stock your dugouts with trouts. Other fish species kind of gets a little bit muddy water depending on fisheries and province. I know in Manitoba you can't put anything besides trout in a dugout, but lots of fun opportunities to ice fish or catch fish right from your own dugout that you can then eat yourself or catch and release. They bring wildlife to your yard, which is always nice. Swimming, even some people use them for water sports. We've dealt with people that have really large dugouts that they actually water ski on. They're quite long and they just kind of rip around on there. So that's a lot of fun. Some of the cons, dugouts are susceptible to evaporation and water losses. So during those hot and dry periods, an improperly built dugout can lose a lot of its water. And also improperly lined as well. So if you're building your dugout and it's not lined properly with clay, bentonite clay, you're going to have water seepage, and all this water that you're trying to retain is just going to be lost, and then you have much bigger problems on your hand. It's quite unsightly, as well as you get slumpy and that kind of different things. Stagnant water can promote algae growth, resulting in water quality issues, foul odors, and reduced water clarity. So that's can cause different issues. You might get complaints from neighbors, and then having local municipalities involved, or even just for yourselves. No one wants to have that kind of situation. And dugouts require additional maintenance, including sometimes you need to dredge them to remove the debris. You need to do shoreline stabilization, that sort of thing, just to prevent it from slumping in if it hasn't been built correctly or if it's really old kind of thing. So there is some additional costs that are involved with a dugout as compared to other kind of water bodies and whatnot. So some of the common issues that we have with dugouts is murky water. So if you have murky water, feel free to just pop that into the chat there, and then after we'll be answering questions. So murky water refers to water that appears cloudy or turbid due to suspended particles such as sediment, algae, organic matter, reducing water clarity and visibility. So it's kind of like all together. Generally, if you say your water's murky, it could be due to a lot of different things. Even a bacteria bloom can cause murky water. So murky water can result from factors such as sediment runoff, nutrient inputs, algae blooms, organic matter, and decomposition. And the reason that it's important to rectify is it can disrupt the aquatic ecosystem. So reducing light penetration, which can inhibit plant growth, impair water quality, and leading to habitat degradation and reduce biodiversity. So in order to maintain a clean dugout, you do want to have all these systems working together. If you have really murky water and it's habitable for those kind of natural organisms, your invertebrates, different fish species and things like that are going to be actually benefiting your dugout, it can have a negative effect for sure. So rectifying some of these issues at hand, and also it's just unaesthetic. It's not nice to look at. People like to see the nice clear water when they're dealing with their dugout. Tannins. So tannins are organic compounds found in decaying plant material, giving up water a brownish color, creating a tea-like appearance. So tannins leach into the pond from decomposing leaves, wood, other organic matter, particularly in natural water bodies surrounded by forests and wetlands. So you see that a lot in kind of like the boreal forest region. There's a lot of lakes that are stained because they usually have they're a little bit more acidic, but also they have a lot of tannins from the deadfall and kind of natural processes. Essentially, it's like tea. You're putting a bunch of logs in, they seep out into the water, and it kind of makes tea. So that can have an effect. So tannins can lower the water pH levels. Also has an effect on lowering light penetration and affect aquatic plant growth. They may also impact fish health and water quality parameters as well. So it's not the end of the world to have tannins, but again, it's kind of whatever look you're going for. In this picture here, that's a good example. It's kind of like essentially like tea there. It's like your Earl Grey tea. So you can't, in this instant, this isn't a dugout, this is a koi pond. So if you're wanting to enjoy looking at your fish, you're not really going to be able to. So another common issue is sediments. Sediments refer to particles of soil, sand, and organic matter and debris that settled into the pond over time. So main cause erosion. You can also have organic matter decomposition, excessive aquatic plant growth, and lack of maintenance. So really it all falls into that factor. It kind of contributes to murky water, but it's going to have an effect on reducing your water depth, which is something that often people want to have deeper water for whatever reason, but it's a lot easier to maintain and treat a dugout that has deeper water, just because it's not going to be getting as stagnant, it's not going to warm up as much, and having those excessive algae blooms. It creates nutrient loading. So when you have sedimentation in a pond, that's bringing in whatever kind of nutrients that are in that soil or those sediments with it. So then you have a loss of water quality, as well as it can affect the habitat as well. And it can also be quite costly to dredge. A pond is quite costly. So it's, unless you have all the equipment, but it's there's a lot of different negatives, I guess, associated with having to clean something back out if it's had a lot of sedimentation and filling in, because then eventually just becomes more of a marsh type situation. So odor is a very popular one, not in that people want it, but that it's a common issue. So pond water or odors refer to an unpleasant smells emanating from water bodies, often caused by the presence of decomposing organic matter and anaerobic bacteria. So basically, still pond, it's baking in the sun. All the living life that has now died is now basically rotting, and that's going to emit odor. Often people refer to as kind of like sulfur or fishy smell. That's just the smell of decomposing algae. So odor in pond water can often result from the decaying organic matter, excessive nutrient input. So having those nutrient loading into the pond will have an effect, which then lead to algal blooms, which can create anaerobic conditions due to poor circulation. And it can also be a factor of accumulation of fish waste is what can cause odor. So lots of different factors, but definitely something that a lot of people are looking to rectify. Odor in pond water can deter recreational activities. So it's an indication of poor water quality, disrupt the aquatic ecosystems by impacting fish and other aquatic life as well. So, but also it's just, if you're living next to a dugout and it's just stinking, then that's also just not enjoyable as well. Your neighbors are going to complain, as well as yourself. So trying to rectify that is always a good idea. So muck, kind of a question for you all. If you've ever been swimming in like a beach or even a dugout kind of thing, and you step in and you feel that ooze between your toes, that's what we refer to as muck. So muck refers to the accumulation of decomposing organic matter, sediment, and debris at the bottom of the pond, creating a dark sludgy layer. So basically it's very humic soil that's just rich in nutrients. Plants love it, but it's gross. So the muck formation occurs due to the decomposing leaves, algae, plants, and other organic materials, as well as sediment runoff from the surrounding land. Muck accumulation can lead to reduced water depth. So the rule of thumb is every water body's end goal in life is to become a meadow. So that's just over many years. Sometimes it's accelerated, sometimes it's not. But like swamps and bogs, for instance, they used to be a lot deeper water bodies, however many thousands of years ago. But over time, they've filled in, and then now they become a swamp or a bog. Over time, elongating that, they'll eventually become a meadow, and over time from that, a forest kind of thing. That's just the natural process that occurs. So reducing your water depth again, which can affect how easy it is to treat your water body. Affects your nutrient loads. It's normally chock full of phosphorus and other nutrients, so that leads to algae blooms and also excessive aquatic weed growth. It degrades your water quality, and then there's also going to be associated water habitat loss. So aquatic weeds. Weeds are unwanted plant species that grow excessively in ponds, interfering with water quality, aesthetics, and recreational activities. So this topic is going to be a little bit, sometimes you want the weeds there, or the plants, I guess. Other times when they're not wanted to be there, they would be considered a weed. So there's kind of a give and take for this, but every pond needs to have balance, which we will talk about in the next couple slides. So causes aquatic weeds thrive due to nutrient enrichment. So all those previous slides before, that's talking about nutrient loading into a pond or your dugout, is going to lead to excessive weed growth. You're creating that perfect habitat, that perfect storm to have a lot of weeds. And so that can affect your sunlight penetration. It can create stagnant water conditions, because if there's weeds there, you're not going to have as much circulation. They act as a bit of a barrier for circulation. And yeah, they're often exacerbated by nutrient runoff and fertilizers, as well as organic decomposition. So why it's a negative effect is aquatic weeds can lead to reduced oxygen. So during the day when they're photosynthesizing, they're pumping out oxygen, but just like trees and everything else that's on land, at night they suck it back in. They're pulling that oxygen back in and releasing CO2. So that can have a negative effect on fish, and just the overall kind of quality of your water. You're not going to have as many invertebrates thriving in those kind of situations if you're having low oxygen, as well as the bacteria. It impairs your water circulation. It can create habitat degradation, and it may also obstruct water flow. So if you're using your pond for irrigation purposes, or in your house kind of thing, that can have an effect where it's constantly plugging that pipe and then burning things out, or you're not even going to be able to turn on the tap and get water when you need it. It can have an effect on if you're using it for recreational activities such as fishing and boating, mostly due to safety reasons. There have been stories, even like so we're based in Manitoba, in the city of Winnipeg, where some man was out in a retention pond trying to save his dog that got caught in the weeds, and the man actually ended up getting caught in the weeds themselves, and he drowned. So there is a safety factor if you have small children, or your kids are going out swimming in the dugout, kind of something that I grew up doing. You need to be careful with that as well. But it's also just not really fun to go and swim in that kind of those weeds there. And it creates breeding grounds for mosquitoes and other pests as well. So they thrive, they need those kind of habitats. So something that might be an invested interest to keep down is reducing having that habitat for mosquitoes and things like that. So cattails, and then we're going to be talking about bulrushes too. So cattails are tall perennial wetland plants that often invade ponds and other water bodies. They have long flat leaves and distinctive brown cylindrical heads. So everyone is, I'm sure, has seen cattails or have heard of cattails before. You might have also heard that cattails are very beneficial because they can suck up nutrients, Well, yes, they do. They also can have a negative effect at the same time because all those nutrients that they suck up, they only have a certain capacity of what they can hold. Then they put everything back in. So then they work as the opposite, where they're putting nutrients into your pond. But not only that, they're very, very aggressive. We get our number one calls that we get for advice on is algae, typically muck, and then cattails, of how to remove cattails because they've just taken over a whole pond. They kind of gone that next step where they're trying to essentially become that marshy meadow. They'll take over a pond. And we've even treated retention ponds for the local municipalities that when we started, even just 5 years ago, they were an open pond with a couple cattails, and now we can hardly get a boat through them. That's because that's how fast and aggressive they are. So cattails can proliferate in ponds due to nutrient enrichment. They also really like shallow water, so that is one thing that you can do if you do build a dugout or have a dugout. Make sure you have that deeper water where the cattails won't be able to survive and march across the pond. A lot of the ponds that we kind of deal with, sometimes they're only 2 or 3 feet deep. So cattails can survive in that, and they'll just march right across, and then you're getting phone calls. The RMs are getting phone calls because people moved in thinking they're going to be living next to a beautiful pond that is now just basically a marsh that has rodents and all kinds of different things living there. Nutrient runoff from fertilizer and organic matter can contribute to their growth. So just like any other plant, cattails can overcrowd ponds. They also will outcompete native vegetation, which reduces biodiversity. They can obstruct water flow, impede recreational activities, and create stagnant areas prone to mosquito breeding. As well as I should have wrote here, as well as cattails can also create areas for duckweed to take hold. Because we'll be talking about duckweed in a couple slides here, but duckweed does not like moving water. So cattails have a lot of open space, but also not a lot of moving water. So once duckweed is able to get hold in there, then it can march across the pond too. Additionally, their dense root system can stabilize sediment, so there is benefits to them as well by altering the pond's ecosystem. Bulrushes. So people use cattails and bulrushes interchangeably. Bulrushes are cattails' little brother that are a little bit nicer and easier to deal with. They're not quite as aggressive, but they can still be. They don't get quite as tall, and it's kind of our preferred plant to be introducing to a pond rather than cattails kind of thing, because they're a lot easier to manage. But bulrushes, also known as club rush or soft stem bulrush, are perennial wetland plants characterized by triangular stems and brownish flowering clusters. They often grow in dense clumps along ponds edges and in shallow water. Same as cattails, bulrushes will proliferate in ponds due to nutrient enrichment, lots of sunlight, shallow water conditions, nutrient runoff from fertilizer and organic matter can contribute to their growth. But also, then again, bulrushes can also overcrowd pond ecosystems, outcompeting native vegetation and reducing habitat diversity. Kind of, it's like it gives and yet it takes. It can produce habitat diversity for some species, but take it away. But there are alternatives that we can introduce that are a little bit better than bulrushes that will have the same effect, but won't be as large of a headache for yourself. They can impede recreational activities such as fishing and boating and create stagnant areas prone to mosquito breeding. Additionally, their dense root systems can also stabilize the sediments, which can alter the pond's hydrology and ecosystem balance. So duckweed. So if you have duckweed, feel free to put that in the chat here. Duckweed is another call that we get a lot about. Duckweed is really, really hard to deal with, but there are ways that we can deal with duckweed. But often duckweed is confused with algae. So A lot of times people say, my pond is green, it's like I can walk on it. Our first question is, does it have leaves? Are you able to like kind of pick it up and take some pictures of it? Because good, I wouldn't say 9 times out of 10, but there is a good percentage that it's actually not algae, it's duckweed. So duckweed is a group of small free-floating aquatic plants belonging to the, I'm not going to try and pronounce that, I can't speak tonight, but commonly found in ponds, lakes, and slow-moving water bodies. These plants are characterized by their small rounded leaves and rapid growth rate, forming dense mats and colonies within the water surface, and are often mistaken for algae. And the speed that duckweed can reproduce across a pond is absolutely astronomical. It is so incredibly fast at moving across a pond. It's really impressive, but also quite scary because we've had tons and tons of clients say, I just spent 8 hours raking duckweed, and then they wake up the next day and it's like they hadn't done a single thing. And they're like, how is this possible? It's because they are just that fast at growing and reproducing. So there are just there's benefits to duckweed, but also some cons as well. So it's all about balance. Causes, they thrive in still nutrient rich water. So if you have a lot of nutrients and it has zero circulation, it's not getting a lot of wind action, doesn't have aeration or anything like that, you're going to get duckweed. And they're often brought in on the underside of ducks or other waterfowl, hence their name. So a duck lands in a pond, does its thing, it leaves, it's stuck to the bottom of them, and it moves to another pond. It's the same idea of when we're trying to prevent aquatic invasive species from moving from water body to water body. Except the birds, they don't know enough to wash themselves off in between water bodies. So, but they can also be introduced by overland flooding. It was just a couple years ago, or was last year? Yeah, I think it was a couple years ago in Manitoba. We had overland flooding, and a lot of ponds that we have been treating for years all of a sudden have gotten duckweed now, and that's just from the overland flooding. It's just introducing the spores into the water system, and once it's there, it's really hard to get rid of. Duckweed is a so the issues with that is they can reduce water clarity, inhibit light penetration, and also can contribute to oxygen depletion, similar to algae, negatively impacting the ecosystem and biodiversity. Duckweed infestations can detract from the visual appeal of the water body. They are a plant, so they will suck up nutrients and have that filtering effect, but anything that it sucks up, so the issue with using plants to suck up nutrients is as that plant dies, where's those nutrients go? Right back into the water body. So unless you wanted to put a bunch of duckweed in and had a harvester where you're removing duckweed from the pond, you're not actually going to end up getting ahead, and you're just going to have unsightly water. So that's why duckweed's not, we try and avoid using excessive plants for water treatments because there is a lot of maintenance involved if you were actually to truly use plants. Same with cattails. If you were to put cattails in a pond to remove nutrients, there's a lot of, it's like mowing your grass. You have to cut them down, remove all that dead debris. So if you can't just cut them and leave it there, because as they decompose, they're going to put nutrients back in. So you have to cut, remove everything, and then a couple weeks later cut and remove everything. So there's a lot of manual labor. So we like to try and introduce plants that don't have that manual labor. So like willows, for example, you can get dwarf willow species that they'll stabilize your bank, they'll remove nutrients, but they won't have that same negative effect as cattails necessarily, where they're not living in the water body, but they're still sucking nutrients from the water. They're creating habitat for birds. And it's kind of just a bit of a balance with other systems in place as well. So algae, so algae comes in a lot of different forms here, so I'm sure there's a lot of questions on that. So surface algae is floating. Surface algae are types of algae that grow and accumulate on the surface of water bodies, such as ponds, lakes, reservoirs. These algae oft form dense mat or scums on the water surface, often appearing as green, brown, or reddish layers. So this algae in particular is called elephant snot. The name kind of implies what it is. It's just a floating surface algae that looks like an elephant just let it all out onto a pond kind of thing. They can reduce the water clarity, inhibit light penetration, leading to oxygen depletion, negatively impacting the ecosystem and biodiversity. And it can also create unpleasant odors and detract from the visual appeal of the water bodies, affecting the aesthetic value. So once this is in there, it's baking in the sun, it's releasing all those odors. It's very unsightly. A lot of people don't like that, but it's part of the natural ecosystem as well. So we do have solutions to mitigate for that. Suspended algae, so floating algae, known as phytoplankton, are microscopic algae suspended in bodies of water, including ponds, lakes, and reservoirs. Their excessive growth of floating algae can lead to reduced water clarity, oxygen depletion. It can alter your pH levels, negatively impacting your aquatic life and water quality. Dense accumulations of suspended algae can create unsightly surface scums, unpleasant odors again, and detracting from the visual appeal, so affecting that recreational and aesthetic values. So this is the algae that if you took a scoop of it in a cup, it's just like a green soup, a green tea kind of thing. So that's just little microscopic algae that's just all throughout the water column, not just at the surface. String algae, also known as filamentous algae or pond algae, are types of algae that form long thread-like strands or mats in bodies of water. These algae can attach to surfaces such as rocks, plants, other substrates. These dense mats of string algae can smother aquatic plants, blocking water flow and alter habitat structure, disrupting natural ecosystems and biodiversity. Unsightly string algae mats or blooms can detract from visual appeal of water bodies, impacting recreational activities and diminishing aesthetic values. So this is the big one, cyanobacteria, aka blue-green algae. It's actually a bacteria, but it often is referred to as algae. Is there a group of photosynthetic bacteria found in pretty much every aquatic ecosystem. Some cyanobacteria can produce harmful toxins, not known as cyanotoxins, which pose a risk to human health, wildlife, and domestic dogs if ingested or exposed. So I'm sure many of you have heard that in the news before, that there was a blue-green algae outbreak, and essentially it's a smaller bodied animals, so including dogs, pets, and then even small kids. And that's where the biggest concern is if you have your 2 or 3 year old or even younger playing in the water, and they like to put things in their mouth, and if they ingest enough of it, the cyanotoxins is actually fatal. It often causes fish kill. Pets, they say don't let your pets drink from it. If you have like a cattle operation, cattle can get sick from it too. It takes a lot for it to kill something like like a full grown cow, just because they're much larger animals, so it just takes longer to accumulate in their bodies. Same with like adults and things like that, but it's not impossible kind of thing if it's found there. So under certain conditions, cyanobacteria can proliferate rapidly, forming dense blooms or surface scums that can cover large areas of water bodies, leading to water quality degradation, oxygen depletion, and ecosystem disruption. Cyanobacteria blooms can have detrimental effects on aquatic ecosystems, so killing fish, habitat, disrupting the food webs, leading to declines in biodiversity and ecological balance. So this is a large talked about topic that is occurring in a lot of natural lakes. And that's when like the province and whatnot would be putting out warnings is because of that. Swimmer's itch. So, swimmer's itch is a skin condition caused by parasites in contaminated water. Parasites known as cystosomes, released by infected snails, penetrate the skin while swimming. Symptoms: itching, rash occurs after swimming in freshwater bodies, and knowing to recognize and avoid contaminated water sources can help prevent swimmer's itch. So again, you might have been at a local beach and they do have a swimmer's itch, but essentially what happens is ducks again. So ducks will land into a pond, which have the eggs attached to them. Those eggs are then released. They grow in the host snail, the snails in the pond, and then the parasites then leave and are trying to find ducks again. But when they can't find ducks, they find humans, and then they try and bite our skin, but they're not able to get through our skin, so that's what causes the rash. So the simplest solution for getting rid of swimmer's itch is getting rid of the snails and that kind of that host species. So water chemistry. So yeah, basically with water chemistry, the main nutrients that we're looking at are phosphorus, ammonium, and nitrates. Phosphorus is the number one, I guess, ingredient that causes algae blooms. It's also an important ingredient for all kind of plant material to thrive on. Ammonium and nitrates also cause algae blooms as well. But normally if you have like high ammonia levels, we were just doing a test on a lake recently that had high ammonia levels. That's a very toxic nutrient that can have a negative effect on fish. So that lake is giving off signs that there's going to be a fish kill because there's a lot of decomposing matter there. But those nutrients are like the main things that we're looking at. Also pH and heavy metals kind of play a role. So a lot of doom and gloom, but let's get into the hopeful side of things of the best practices when building or maintaining a dugout. So number one is size. So what determines the appropriate size? Usually the bigger the better. It makes it a little bit easier to maintain. If you have a larger dugout, you probably won't have to worry about cattails or duckweed as well, which are kind of those two main factors. But also larger size comes with more complications and managing and treating. So if you were to do fish or no fish, if you have a larger dugout, then you can put a lot of fish in there if you're not worrying about fish. But then you can also be limited to permits that you can get as well. So I'm sure we have a lot of people from all over the country with us today. So checking in with your local municipality on that, your local governments on the permits for actually building and what kind of size you can build, because there's a lot of different environmental laws, right of ways, and water are kind of things. You can't just dig a hole and call it a day, because then you might have to be called to fill it back in, kind of thing. And then just location, another factor to consider is does it even fit in the landscape thing? But larger is typically better for mitigating certain areas. So deeper water is more efficient at aerating. So we'll be talking about aeration in a little bit, but the deeper the water, the more efficient that is going to be at aerating. So and then you're going to have less issues. So if you do aerate the water, then you're going to have improved less nutrient loading, improved water quality, all kinds of different things like that. So there's definite benefits for that, rather than having a 2, 3, 4, even 5 foot kind of flat dugout that can act as a heat sink. So it'll warm up a lot quicker than have all these kind of common issues occurring a lot faster and a lot easier. It's better for fish, so people that do stock trout in their dugouts, they can stay a bit cooler. And same with if you're overwintering fish. So this is a large airfield that uses for aeration and our overwintering fish, and levels of oxygen remain very high in this particular spots all throughout the year. And then I don't think they've had a fish kill since replacing their aeration system. And then also they're easier to maintain just because there's a lot of natural occurring things that are working to your benefit rather than having too shallow water. So deeper is always better, but also have to consider your permits. To rock or not. So dugouts with gravel and rock bottom perform well. Main reason is it provides additional square footage for bacterias to grow. It also can lighten the color of the pond. So if you're looking to have pond water that you can see right down, if anyone's ever swam at like a gravel pit or something like that, or like a nice sandy beach, that rock and gravel really lightens the color so you can see further down. Whereas if you had like just clay bottom or yeah, essentially clay bottom, then it kind of acts as that heat shield, so it looks black, and then it doesn't lighten the color as much. But the other big thing is the bacteria. So natural bacteria that you want to introduce, as well as um, uh, uh, or the naturally occurring bacteria will thrive better in ponds that have rock and gravel spaces, because they kind of latch onto all those different crevices and points within the pond, rather than just mud bottom. They don't do as well there. So pond plants can also be introduced. They soften the look of the pond. They provide biodiversity. If done right, they help pull the nutrient from the ponds, and you're always better to bare root them. So yeah, want to be careful again what you're introducing for plants, and you're always free to contact us, and we can give you a full rundown of, yes, put that in, don't put that in, or even we can look at doing a bit of a design there. But main things to stay away from is if you are going to the cactus route, make sure that you have ample deep water so that your cactus won't take over the pond, but also being aware of that they will eventually consume the entire edge of the pond too. Um, but there are a lot of other plants, like I mentioned, willows, or you can get different flowering species, like marsh marigolds and things like that, that they do perform well. They work as nutrients, um, uh, pulling out nutrients and things like that. But then they also look quite a bit nicer, where you can still enjoy the pond there. Yeah. So a bit of a review on the whole system. So you got your rocks, aquatic plants, kind of that whole system working together. So now we're going to talk about treatment options of what you can do to help maintain your dugout. So aeration is probably number one. Um, it's going to check a lot of those boxes that we kind of talked about of trying to prevent like low oxygen affecting your nutrient loading. It helps promote biodiversity and getting a lot of those natural processes going. So with non-aerated water, aeration is your number one tool for reducing odors. When you don't have aeration, it creates a thermocline in the water, which underneath that thermocline creates gas. And that's where everything is just decomposing, kind of going at a very slow pace of decomposition. And what that byproduct is normally sulfuric gas, which then if when the water body flips in the spring and the fall, that's all released, and then there's a large odor. But even above that thermocline, you have other plant species, and it's kind of like baking in the sun. So it's it's creating those unpleasant odors. So by introducing an aeration system, you're going to improve your water clarity, improves the fish health, but then also providing oxygen and mixing of that water, releasing those gases, that releasing that odor that is caused by those gases, as well as it produces aerobic bacteria. Aerobic bacteria, which we'll talk about a little bit, are bacteria that use oxygen to perform, and they're a lot more efficient at decomposing matter. So and you're not having that byproduct, that odorous smell. So there's two types of aeration that you can add. I guess we could say there's a third type of aeration, which is natural wind. Unfortunately, naturally wind doesn't really aerate water. That's why we have to put in these other kind of systems. If you had a lake, that's normally enough for that. But even in, we still are putting in aeration systems in large lakes as well, because they are either too shallow and it's causing fish kills in them too. So we do put in mechanical aeration. So there's two types of aeration that we can add, which is floating fountain and subsurface aeration. So subsurface aeration has two main categories, or which is coarse bubble and fine bubble. Coarse bubble are large bubbles breaking at the surface. Fine bubble, so like the coarse bubble is just a couple larger bubbles, single bubble. Just normally it's like a pipe that has a hose going out of it, and it's glugging away. And you look at it and you're like, that looks pretty awesome. That's putting a lot of air out. But in reality, it's not. Micro bubbles, which are the fine bubbles, are millions of micro bubbles that are breaking at the surface. So the bubbles that come out of the aerator don't actually diffuse into the water. It's the disturbance at the surface. So once the bubbles reach the surface and break, there's a micro disturbance that allows for the water molecule to take on oxygen, and then it creates a circulation. So having a single bubble is just creating a single bubble going up like this, and then it's creating, there is going to be some improvement to oxygen, but it's not circulating at all. Whereas micro bubbles act as a conveyor belt. So as it breaks at the surface, it pulls the water down to the bottom and then trains water from across the bottom and circulates throughout the water body. So fine bubble aeration is regarded as many more times efficient at aerating compared to coarse bubble systems. They're also much less cost. A coarse bubble system typically has a large pump that's costing a lot of money and power, whereas the fine bubble aeration system, they actually are much more energy efficient. So there's money as well. Subsurface aerators have less maintenance requirements. It has a couple filters normally, at least the ones that we deal with. You can get larger, like gas powered compressors and things that have a bit more maintenance, but our aerators have just a couple filters. Every 2 years you put in a maintenance kit. So very simple, and they're modular as well. They do not require removal, as well as if you are planning on stocking fish in your dugout, they are crucial in overwintering fish. Kind of it's a must. Otherwise, your investment in putting these fish in the pond is going to go to waste, because they will likely die. Maybe not the first year, but at some point they will die because of the lack of oxygen demand. So then there's fountains. Fountains are aesthetically pleasing, and dugouts can be equipped with lighting and come in a variety of sizes. They are efficient at aerating the top few feet of the water, but and they can also be effective at controlling duckweed. So they mentioned that we were going to talk about duckweed. So duckweed does not like water movement. So aerators, they help with that. So whether it's fountains or subsurface aerators, if you can get that water moving, that duckweed won't live there, because it doesn't like the moving water, but it will if it's able to take hold. So if you had say you had a circle of a pond and around it had cattails, the duckweed would still live in the cattails because that's still stagnant water, but then it won't encroach into the pond. So fountains are good at helping control duckweed in shallow ponds, but they have increased maintenance challenges such as clogging, and they have to be put in and removed every single year, which isn't the end of the world, but they do have those maintenance. It's also much more costly to run because pushing water compared to pushing air is much more costly. So um, that's kind of in a nutshell. But here's a little bit of a diagram to break down how the circulation difference. So if you had subsurface that's right on the bottom of the water, it's creating that conveyor belt, whereas a fountain, it's only like 2 or 3 feet below the surface, so it's pulling in water from those 2 or 3 feet, but then it's spraying up, and wherever that lands is creating your conveyor belt. So it's only doing an area of as high as you can go. So if you put in like a 2.5, 4 horsepower fountain that's really big, then sure, it's going to do an area, but it's only going to do the first few feet anyways. It's not going to actually suck in any water from beneath. It's compared to an aerator. So often we do put in fountains for mostly just for looks kind of thing. And very occasionally we'll do them for duckweed control and shallow water bodies as well. Then we have additives. So beneficial bacteria, it's naturally occurring bacteria found in ponds, lakes, rivers, that sort of thing. So just like humans, we have good bacteria, so that are benefiting our bodies. So same with a water ecosystem. So there's anaerobic and aerobic bacteria, which both play a role. Anaerobic means that they don't need oxygen to survive. They're much more slower at decomposing because they don't have that oxygen. And then often they do produce odors as they break things down. Whereas aerobic bacteria, they require oxygen, but they're much faster. So they're kind of like, we always say putting aeration is like giving the bacteria Red Bull. It's just going to thrive on that. So bacteria acts as a decomposer for nutrients or organics within the water, limiting algae growth. So adding bacteria will consume the nutrients, and then that's released as a gas. The anaerobic or the aerobic bacteria doesn't release that odorous gas. It's just kind of constantly degassing off the pond. So that's actually removing those nutrients and not putting it back in. It's changing the composition of the nutrients, whereas plants will suck up the nutrients and then put them back in, kind of thing. Whereas this is being re-released. So introducing bacteria is key for boosting the immune system of the pond and maintaining the water quality. So while yes, ponds do have naturally occurring bacteria in them, introducing them is kind of just going that above and beyond. It's giving that extra boost to really bring nutrients down. Because as they are introduced, eventually they'll die and decolonize and reduce them. So if we're adding bacteria to the pond, it can it can accelerate and maintain that water quality that we're looking for. And beneficial bacteria can focus on lots of different things and lots of different nutrients, which you're free to reach out to us about, and we'll be able to point you in the right direction. But we have bacteria that will consume muck, so which can help reduce aquatic weeds. We also have bacteria that focuses on the kind of nutrients in the ponds as well. And so that water quality column bacteria, so that reducing your algae and things like that as well. So so then we have phosphate binders and enzymes. So they're also naturally occurring, and what are boosting that productivity of beneficial bacteria. So it's kind of like giving that extra energy boost to the bacteria. And they're often paired with a phosphate binder, which is the key, remember, for algae growth. So our bacteria can target ammonias and nitrates, but not phosphorus, whereas a phosphate binder will bind the phosphorus in the water, making it unusable for algae to uptake and grow and proliferate. So it binds the free floating phosphorus in the water column, making it insoluble for growing algae, causing the now bonded phosphorus to sink to the bottom. Then we have pond dye. So pond dye are additives that change the aesthetic look of the pond and limit weed growth. So essentially it's like putting sunglasses on a pond. So they act as a UV shield. The light can penetrate as deep to the growing weeds. They come in a range of colors. We just had St. Patrick's Day the other day. If you wanted to put green pond dye in, you could. And I know that I think in Boston they've done that before for St. Patrick's Day, where they dyed the river green. But most common is kind of like that natural blue or black, or you can even get kind of like turquoisey Caribbean type blue. They're not as effective in shallow water ponds, just because you'd have to put a lot in just to completely block out the sun, but there's still going to be some sun penetration if it's in really shallow areas. So pond dye is more for a look kind of thing. We don't it does play a role, but it's not as effective as some of our other recommendations. So it's just a before and after. So it looks a lot better, and then it does play a role for affecting the weeds growth in the deeper water as well. So then there's also weed cutters and rakes. So this is not something you can just put in. The other treatments that we mentioned are very easy. You just put them in the water, they go to work, and then you just have to repeat that. Weed cutters and rakes are a lot more manual, but they do exactly that. They will cut the weeds and whatnot. So if you do have cattails or weeds in your pond, then using weed cutters and then raking to get rid of that you can't just cut them and leave it, because that's going to put nutrients back into the water, and then you have other problems. So raking it back out once you cut. So it's very manual, but with these different tools, it makes it a little bit easier to do. And normally it's often people will do this in a dugout for if they're using it for swimming, or if it's where their water intake is as well. Then we have muck agitators. So if you have a lot of muck in the bottom of the pond there, or you have excessive weed growth, getting rid of the muck is the number one thing that you want to do to limit those excessive weed growth. I know we had a question before the webinar that was about milfoil. So milfoil is really tough. Also, it kind of depends on what type of milfoil you have, but you want to agitate the bottom of the pond to release that muck, and then it can be consumed, and then the weeds will be less likely to take hold. If you do have milfoil or certain types of weeds, you don't want to cut them necessarily unless it's really early in the season, because as soon as you cut them, then it's just pop. It's just releasing everything, and then you're going to have a much larger problem on your hands. So being a little bit aware of what you have before you do any sort of things like that. Then we'll talk about a little bit about fish scale, fish care here. So if you are putting fish in your pond, you want to make sure you're meeting the needs of your fish. So dissolved oxygen is crucial for fish, particularly trout, which is if you're in a dugout situation. That's kind of like the only fish that you can stock, but they need a lot of oxygen and they are susceptible to winter kill. So having that aeration system is definitely important. Dechlorinization and cycling the water before introducing fish is highly recommended. That's more so for a smaller water body. If you had a dugout, you don't have to worry about that as much. Fish do occasionally require treatments for parasites and diseases. So just being aware of that. Overwintering the fish in the pond requires a pond heater and aeration in order to move indoors. You want to make sure you're using a high quality food for them. You can they're almost every pond that we deal with does eventually get natural minnows and stuff in them, but introducing food can encourage fish to come to you when they see you, and B, it just helps them to grow and have a better longevity, because there is a cost associated with stocking fish. So we want to see them survive so that you can enjoy them for years to come. Uh, if you're introducing fish to a smaller water body, general rule of thumb is 1 inch per 10 gallons. Um, Depth is also very important for trout in particular. If you're introducing trout to a dugout, we look for at least minimum 15 feet, just because they need colder water, and without that colder water, which is not usually attainable in less than 15 feet in the dead of the heat, then you can have fish go with that. And then just introducing rock and caves and different things just to have habitat for them as well.